The Florida Gators have wrapped up spring football, and there are a lot of questions about what our expectations should be for the 2023 season. We've got a treat for you all as we've invited JD PicKell from On3 to talk just about that. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. JD, you have underperformed last year. There's no real way around it. And it doesn't get any easier because they have one of the hardest schedules in the country next season. But they did get off to a really good start at Utah last year. How do you see that matchup going week one this season?
Yeah, I mean, we look at that game a year ago, and it really came down to Anthony Richardson just being Anthony Richardson, right? I mean, like that was the great equalizer. It was bad weather, it was the swamp. And so this coming year, you got a lot of pieces back for Utah. Maybe not as much as they had a season ago, but they got Cam Rising back. I'm very curious to see how Florida's offensive line holds up. The spring game wasn't overly encouraging. And then on top of that, is Florida's quarterback for that game, is it on the roster right now? Is it a Jack Miller, is it Graham Mertz, or is it somebody completely different? I know I've seen some things on Florida Twitter about Ben Bryant from Cincinnati being an option, and Malik Murphy if he jumps in the portal from Texas. And so there's still so many variables that are yet to be settled. So I'm fascinated, but no AR obviously with him being the difference last year. Going to Salt Lake, it'll be an interesting one. I'm excited for it.
I honestly think it's such a trip of a lifetime for Gator fans too. I mean, this is not going to happen again that they play out there in our lifetime. So, don't love Thursday night, but I feel a little bit better about it since it's the opening of college football in general. I think if it was, week 2, week 3, I would hate it a little bit more. But what do you think about Florida on Thursday night?
I like it for the exact reasons you just said. Like the prime time matchup on a Saturday would have been preferable. But if I'm a Gator fan, I'm like, cool, let's the game together. Let's go to Salt Lake. It's on a Thursday. We're the only show in town. Like, let's make this happen. But yeah, I mean the Thursday kind of feels clunky, but opening weekend, I think having a game that's not on Saturday, having the stage to yourself. I mean, the entire country is going to be watching
Yeah.
that game even more so than if it was on a Saturday. So I think that'll be a good one to watch.
So UF is probably going to be an underdog to Georgia, LSU, and Florida State. Where is their best chance for an upset in those three if you're looking at those games right now?
Ooh, my knee-jerk reaction is to say LSU strictly because of we've seen LSU just be inconsistent at times. Like we saw the LSU team that showed up against Florida, then we saw the LSU team that showed up against Texas A&M, which are two obviously very different operations in terms of what they were getting done on the field. So I think if LSU doesn't take that next step from a maturing the culture standpoint, then we're going to have to like kind of have a wait and see with LSU, especially if they can contain Jaden Daniels and make him more of a thrower. But the other piece of this is just like rivalry weekend. We talk about it every year. Like
Sure.
you kind of just throw the records out the window. It doesn't matter what you did previously in the year. Like it's your rival. It's one Saturday. All bets are off. So for that reason, I'll say Florida State, but LSU will be a curious case to watch as we get closer and closer to that one.
Do you think UF takes the next step and beats the teams that they're supposed to beat? The teams like Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Arkansas, Missouri, guys on the schedule that should be a W every year when your team is playing consistently?
I think so kind of like we talked about earlier. I think so much of it really depends on what they have on the offensive line. Because I think when I watched that spring game, like I didn't have a ton of reservations around Graham Mertz when he was able to get comfortable in the pocket and throw on time. I mean, when he's able to just sit back there and strictly play quarterback,
Hmm.
feel like he's in a pretty decent position to succeed. But if he has to run around back there and ad lib and find a way to extend plays with his legs, and if he is your starting quarterback, I mean that's not his game. And so that to me is going to be the number one thing: is can the offensive line hold up? Because I think they have a lot of the personnel in other places to do it. I think defense will be better. I'm excited for Andy Jean and Ricky Pearsall's back. There's a lot of other things to be excited about. The running back room, I think, is one of the best in the country. So if they can have the offensive line play to have a good jumping off point and kind of get the deal started offensively, then I think you can answer that question with a little more confidence.
Interestingly enough, we talked to Shannon Snell a few weeks ago. He is a former offensive lineman for UF, and he had said, now we've had a couple little dinged up injuries since then, so this could change. But he said he actually felt like there were more guys that were able to be in the offensive line rotation for this upcoming year than there were last year, which is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, obviously you don't have Osiris Torrance, but if UF has actually more guys to be able to rotate in there, he seemed to think that the line could be just as good and maybe even take a step better, which would be, really helpful given the rest of the pieces of the offense.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, probably the cohesion part of that too. Like we got to see him in the spring game, and some of that is, you're trying to put a unit together for the first time, and it's so interesting because I feel like offensive line especially is the one position group to where you can have four guys doing the right thing, but if that tackle doesn't, fan out to block the edge defender and instead he blocks down, like man, those four guys did their job, but we're dealing with a loss of 3 yards because my guy at the tackle spot can't. So I think being able to get synced up as they get into fall, to get closer into actually going to be the difference maker. Because I mean, especially if Micah Mazuka can, it sounds like he's sticking around. From
Yep.
I mean, knock on wood, it sounds like he's still going to be a part of it. Really talented players. So, and that way I'm excited for him. But obviously, the spring game leaves a little bit tired, I'm sure, in the minds of Gator fans.
Right, absolutely. What kind of year do you expect out of one of UF's rivals, Tennessee? This is a team that really was kind of trending in the right direction last season, and in years past has been a major rival of UF.
Yeah, I mean, Florida fans are probably not going to be overwhelmingly happy with me after this answer. I think Tennessee's really in a really good spot. I think Josh Heupel's got that thing humming, and also keep this in mind. I mean, he's going into his third season, whereas Billy Napier and company, they're just going into their second year. They're trying to, revamp it, and he's inheriting themselves to be. But Tennessee right now, I mean, I'm a believer in Joe Milton. I'm a believer in Deontay Thornton, the transfer from Oregon. I think they're positioned to do some exciting things this year. But Florida just hang tight. Let Billy Napier kind of let this thing bake a little bit and give it some time. But yeah, I'm excited about Tennessee this year, to be honest.
So, how important is this season to the overall Billy Napier tenure? Year two, how important is it?
I think it's very because the first year everyone kind of gives you a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I think living proof of that. Like I'm the one on the front line saying it's been 13 games.
Hmm.
He's just kind of getting his culture in place. He hasn't even recruited a team yet. He's dealing with those players. He's going to the portal, and so I think year two it starts to be a little bit more of a hey, show me year. It's a little more of a okay, well now you've had 2 years in the saddle. What do you have to show for it? And the place where that could get dangerous is on the recruiting trail, where if Florida were to win 6 games next year, I think the pitch to recruits drastically changes. You go from saying, if you were to win 10 games, you're saying this thing's headed the right direction, come be a part of this, we're trending upwards. Maybe not even 10 games. Winning 8 games, showing improvement would be that kind of pitch. But if you win 6 games again or 7 games, you're kind of having to have this big explanation as to, hey, we don't have our guys yet. Hey, it's time, come be a part of this, which, you'd much rather make the pitch of, hey, this thing's a rocket ship, get on board. So that's my thoughts on that. But year two, absolutely crucial for Billy Napier, yeah.
Well, and the flip side of that is recruiting for other programs at that point. If Florida gets 6 wins or 7 wins, they're saying he's not going to be the coach by the time you get here. So you don't want to go to Florida. You want to go to LSU, Florida State, Georgia, whatever. And so Florida wins 9, 10 games. That's not going to be a negative recruiting tactic that's used against the Gators. But if they only win six, recruits are going to hear that on the trail.
Absolutely. I mean, in a hotbed state like Florida, where you have like all the top talent in the country down the street from you, which is a dogfight right now with Miami and Florida State's gaining steam and what they're going to do going forward. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely on the money. And then, not to mention all the other SEC schools that are around state. So, yeah, that'd be absolutely crucial to have something that you can to recruits for a positive trend. I mean, I think that's paramount.
All right, JD, thanks so much for joining us. Tell everybody where they can find your work and your content.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Y'all have a great show. You can find any of my work on the On3 YouTube channel. You can follow me on the socials, on Instagram, on Twitter at JD PicKell. But no, I'm fired up to watch y'all's Gators this coming year, and appreciate you guys again having me on this platform. Y'all do an awesome show.
Well, thanks. We appreciate you. Appreciate JD PicKell from On3 for joining us to talk about the 2023 season and his expectations there. We went more in depth on the quarterback battle, and that will be our next video, so make sure you're subscribed and you don't miss it. If you missed our chat with him on UF needing to show patience with Napier, click right here.